Greetings, everyone, and good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Wandering Scribe audiobook series. Now, I know I'm a little late, and I do apologize, but I am here now to continue where we left off with Michael. Now, we're going to pick up where we left off in Chapter 2. Now, if you remember, Michael committed the greatest injustice of all, slaughtering of the innocent. And where we last left off, he and his band of angels have been caught red-handed and are now going to be brought to the council for sentencing. So without further ado, let's resume where we left off. No words were said back at the Watcher's outpost. Delphi and her patrol, Michael and the other angels, and the human girl made their way to the council chambers. The air was still cold. Not even the fires could warm them. As they entered, the company was greeted by the one person Michael feared more than anyone else, Metatron. Metatron was the lord of all angels and archangels. He was second under the Creator and guarded the holy throne. The mighty angel was a veteran of many wars against the fallen angel Lucifer Brightstar, his wife Lilith, and his son Samael. Underneath his armor were many scars, some from demonic encounters, others self-inflicted. His gaze was fixed on the young warrior angel who dared not speak until last. "Step forward, Michael," bellowed Metatron. The young angel cautiously moved toward his commander. He dared not look up and see the face of utter shame and disappointment. "Michael, I am very disappointed in you. Not only have you gone against the council's orders, but you and your friends have broken their oath, which they swore to the Creator, the Council, and me." Michael flinched at the last part. Metatron needed Michael to know this. "Look at us, young angel. Look!" The young angel slowly raised his head and looked directly into the eyes of his accusers. Any strength he had before was gone. Now, only fear remained. But, trained not to show fear, he straightened up and faced the council. Ezekiel was the first to speak. "Michael, you have committed one of the greatest sins of all, the murder of the innocent. Not only that, but you and your friends also went against our orders and disobeyed us. By that right, you should all be executed." The other angel snapped his fingers, and suddenly Gabriel and the others were forced to their knees as Delphi and her squad unsheathed their weapons. Michael grew fearful for his friends. His eyes widened at the sight of swords being raised above their heads. Panicking, he released an unearthly bark. "Stop! They're innocent in this!" Metatron raised a hand, halting the execution. "Yet they sinned as well, thus making them guilty," said Mortimer. "Uriel and the others were against the plan. I persuaded them to follow me. The blame is solely mine and mine alone." Tears were now forming in the young angel's eyes. "If someone must be punished, let it be me, but spare them, I beg of you." Metatron glanced at Ezekiel and Mortimer, and the three angels silently nodded in unison. "Very well, Michael. Your friends' punishment will still be severe. They are stripped of their ranks and status and will no longer serve in the Archangel Corps. They will live out their services as worker angels, helping the Creator. But they will live." Michael let out a sigh of relief. Metatron ordered Delphi and her men to stand down. Gabriel and the others collected themselves from the floor. However, the trial was not over. Suddenly, Michael was pinned to the ground by two of Delphi's men. Before he could think, he felt two strong hands grip his metal wings. Struggling to free himself, he was held in place by a foot stamped on his back. Uriel and the others were powerless to stop the trial and were forced to watch with utter horror at the pain their commander was about to experience. With sheer force and strength, Michael felt his wings tear from his body. The bone, skin, tendons, and muscles ripped from the metal. Blood dripped down his back. Michael tried to scream, but the pain was too much for him. All he could do was endure and hope not to pass out. Finally, with one last pull, he felt his wings separated from his body. The sudden shock finally pushed him to the brink, letting out a gut-curdling scream that filled the chambers. With his wings gone, he was no longer an angel. He was now mortal. A human, some would say. His body soon went numb, and he felt nothing but pain all across his back. Needing assistance, the two angels lifted him. Limped, Michael weakly looked at the council. Metatron took the wings from Delphi. "This is but a taste of your punishment. You will be executed unless you have anything else to say." The two angels hoisted Michael to his feet and helped him to stabilize himself. Breathing erratically, he gathered his thoughts before speaking aloud. Nathaniel is alive. A commotion broke out in the chambers. Ezekiel brought everyone back to order. Mortimer got up from his seat. It had been eons since anyone mentioned that name. He flew down towards Michael and cupped his head in his hand. What did you say? Michael cleared his throat once more. Nathaniel is alive. And this time, I have proof. Ezekiel ordered the two angels to hoist Michael back up onto his feet. He glared menacingly at the former angel. Choose your next words very carefully, Michael. The former angel nodded and asked Delphi to bring Margaret before the council. Inside the room were the sounds of gas and shock, as this was the first time a mortal had been brought forward before the Holy Council. Margaret was scared, of course. She was in a room full of strangers. She glanced over to Michael, who reassured her that everything was all right. Margaret, tell them what you told Raphael and me, said Michael. The young girl cleared her throat and explained to the council what had happened. A black-winged angel came to our city knowing of the attack. He escorted us to a field and spoke in a strange language, unknown to many. He said he was protecting us. After her explanation, the council was silent. Many discussed the news amongst themselves. Metatron then spoke up. Is this child the only survivor? Michael and the others nodded their heads. The Lord of Angels cleared his throat, brushing his fingers through his long white hair. Michael, do you swear on your life this is the truth? I swear to you all that this is the truth. I know my word means nothing now, but I would not fabricate this, and I believe you know that to be true, my lord. Metatron let out a deep sigh. He had long thought his past in the Angel Civil War was forgotten, but it seemed it had not forgotten him. Chapter 3. Looking for Angels. While the council discussed how they would tell the Creator this news, Michael was still in pain. His back was still raw, and he could feel the presence of his wings still. Moving past the guards, Uriel and the others went to check on their friend. Thank you, Michael, said Uriel. She placed a hand on his shoulder. He looked at her wearily, but still managed to make a smile. He did not know it, but he felt his back begin to warm. He saw a glowing light coming from behind. What are you doing? He asked. Uriel said nothing and continued. She was using her power to heal her brother's wounds. His open sores, where his wings once resided, closed, and the pain slowly subsided. However, even though he was somewhat healed, he was still mortal. Thank you. Suddenly, an angel rushed through the chamber doors. It was a worker angel, and his once white robes was covered in blood and torn to pieces. His eyes widened with shock and terror. Everyone turned their attention to him. Delphi went over to him and slowly eased his tension. What happened? She said. Demons. Hordes of them. Outposts under attack, but not alone. Before he could finish, the young angel passed out. Delphi, gather what men we have left and push back the invaders, said Metatron. Saluting her lord, Delphi and her comrades left the chamber room in great haste. They turned attention to Michael and the others, then back to the elders. Elders, in this dire situation, I ask that you allow Michael and his angels to fight. We grant that request except for Michael. Without his wings, he is no longer an angel. Michael stood up as best he could. I can still fight, said Michael. The elder shook his head. You cannot hold or touch a holy weapon anymore. The slightest touch will burn you. Sir, allow me to transfer some of my powers to Michael. He may not be an angel, but he can fight like one. Asked Uriel. Michael turned his head to his siblings with a shocked expression. My elders, please let me fight. I'm already sentenced to death. At least now my death will serve a purpose. Ezekiel nodded in agreement. Very well, Michael. We grant you that one request. Michael saluted the elders respectfully. Before anything else, Uriel placed a hand on Michael's head. The former angel soon felt the same warmth as before. This time the warmth made him feel powerful. Once more, removing her hand, Michael opened his eyes with pride. Though he was not a whole angel, he had the powers of one, at least for the moment. Seeing Margaret, he told her to stay in the chamber room until he returned. The little girl nodded in agreement. Grabbing his weapon and armor, Michael led his friends into battle. Once they got outside, they realized this was no longer an invasion. This was a war of extermination. All along the battlements, the archangels fought demons and hordes of other monsters. Gold and obsidian warriors clothed in black robes, all wearing jackal masks, deformed horned men with glowing green eyes covered in steel clothes, and swarms of raven-winged demons with iron spears. "Split up! We need to close the choke point," said Michael. The team split up and attacked in different engagements. It would be a mistake that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Heading to the battlements, Michael clashed with the demonic horde. Thanks to Uriel, he gutted, hacked, slashed, and killed any creature that came over the walls. However, their efforts were futile, as there was no end to them. To add further worry, Michael was still mortal. Yes, he may have the powers of an angel, but he could still die like a mortal man. Thus, he had to be extremely careful around demonic entities. As the angels pushed back the hordes of darkness, Michael believed they were winning. Just then, a roar erupted from the horde and into the night. Suddenly, out of the shadows, two massive creatures emerged. It was unlike anything the angels had seen before. One was covered in black fur, resembling a giant wolf, while the other was covered in scales and appeared like a snake. Their destruction destroyed the defenses, sending angels flying in different directions. The other attackers then picked them off one by one. Gathering up any survivors, Michael and the others fell back to the castle keep and barricaded themselves in. Once inside, Michael took a head count of how many they had left. "How many of us survived?" asked Michael. 300 at most. "How many are dead?" "The majority of them," said one angel. Delphi and her group were also with them. They were bandaging up any of those who were seriously wounded. "Did we all see the same enemies outside? Men with golden masks, fiends with glowing green horns, giant animals? These aren't the armies of Lucifer." "I agree, young Michael. It appears our enemies has made some allies during that time," said Metatron. "Though they were safe inside the castle, it was only a matter of time until the enemies breached." As the survivors prepared to barricade the doors with what they had, one angel rushed to Michael. "Michael, the child, she's gone." "What?" he replied. "The elders? All dead. Something or someone got inside the chamber room. We tried to follow them, but lost them as they entered the upper levels." "I'm sorry, Michael." This made him very concerned. He could not allow another innocent to die under his watch, but he also couldn't abandon his friends. Suddenly, the barricade was beginning to shake. Outside, the armies of darkness were chanting at the wolf, who continuously rammed his head into the door, trying to break it open. With every boom, the barricade was losing strength. Just then, out of nowhere, the floor beneath their feet began to shake and give way, starting from behind the group. Next, a massive hole emerged, and out came more deformed creatures of the night. Metatron ordered half of the defenders to deal with the monsters, while the others kept pressing on the door, trying to hold off. The fighting was soon up close and personal. From behind, Gabriel shot his arrows at the monsters exiting the hole, whereas Raphael was in the heart of battle, wrestling demons and heathens to the ground. Michael, Uriel, and the other angels fought hard against the demon horde. However, just like before, they knew sooner or later they would be overrun. "The battle is lost, Michael. It would be best if you left now," shouted Uriel. "I will not leave you all to die," shouted Michael. "Damn it, Michael, if we all die, hope dies with us. One of us needs to live," yelled Gabriel. "You must keep the child safe, Michael," screamed Raphael. Michael knew his friends were right. They were too few to hold back the demons and barricade the door together. Huffing in defeat, Michael nodded his head. "Michael, hand me your weapon. The passage up is narrow," said Uriel. Tossing her his polearm, she handed him Hellfire. "Go, Michael. We'll take care of things down here. Get Margaret and get the hell out of here," said Uriel. He took the sword up the stairs and made the long journey up. Going higher and higher, he noticed the walls turned from glossy white to obsidian black. Not only that, the air turned cold and still. But he pressed onward. After making his way up to the top of the chambers, he slowly opened the door. The door made a creaking sound as the former angel slowly entered. Looking around, he called for Margaret. "Margaret, where are you?" he asked. Looking around, he could not find her. Then he heard a slight moan from the back of the room. Moving towards the sound, Michael found her covered in blood and traumatized. Michael knelt to calm the child. "Margaret, what happened?" he asked. She said nothing. Instead, she pointed behind him. Turning his head, his eyes widened as a cloud of black mist melted away from the shadows. With the fog slowly fading, a cloaked figure stood before the pair. Moving his hood, standing before Michael was a black-winged angel, a true-born Nephilim. The Nephilim was covered head to toe in armor, a pointed helm like a dragon, with two outward, curved, wing-like ornaments covered his head. His shoulders were covered with pauldrons that were masterfully crafted and resembled dragon scales. His upper arms were protected by black metal sleeves and steel vambraces with curved blades attached to each outer side of his arms. The breastplate was made from one large piece of iron, and his upper legs were covered by jagged, fully covered cuirasses with metal greaves protecting his lower legs. Michael was petrified. He had heard stories of angels like these before, but had never met one up close. Motioning Margaret to stay behind him, Michael unsheathed his sword and aimed it at the enemy, but felt his hands tremble. "Who are you?" he asked. The Nephilim said nothing. Instead, he drew his own sword, but this was no ordinary blade. The sword had a large, narrow, barbed blade shape made of obsidian, held by a grip wrapped in rare gray dragon skin. A barbed, intricate crossguard protected its user's hands. "That sword. It can't be, but that means you're—" "Careful now. You wouldn't want to ruin the surprise," said the Nephilim. His voice was cold, distant, and ghastly. "But you're supposed to be dead," stated Michael. The Nephilim chuckled. "My death was greatly exaggerated. Now step aside." He pointed his sword at Michael. Though no longer an angel, he still had an angel's heart. "I will not let you take her," said Michael. In an instant, the Nephilim lunged forward, sword pointed at Michael's heart. The former angel blocked it and countered with an overhead strike. The strike glanced off the helm, and the two went at it, back and forth, attacking and defending. Swish, thrust, jab, Michael launched a series of attacks at the rogue angel. But even with Uriel's powers, he was too slow. The Nephilim quickly gained the upper hand and pushed Michael out of the room and down the stairs. Margaret ran after him, not wanting to be left alone. Prompting himself up, he had his back to the walls, panting heavily. The Nephilim cocked his head and slowly exited the doorway. "Going somewhere?" he mused. Getting Margaret behind him, Michael kept his weapon outward, keeping his distance away from the enemy. "Face it, Angel. With a rising power now, your rule is over. It's our time. I'd rather die than submit to you." "Well, that can be arranged." Before he could go any further, the Nephilim stopped and touched his head. He closed his eyes and listened intensely. Opening his eyes once again, he sheathed his blade. "Seems we must postpone our conversation for another time. Farewell." As quickly as he appeared, the Nephilim returned to the shadows and was gone. With his enemy no longer visible, Michael fell on the stairs and tried to regain his breath. He felt his hands tremble and shake. Fear gripped his heart, and Margaret placed her tiny hands on the angel's shoulders, trying to calm him down. Michael was able to gather his thoughts and gather his breath. Letting out a quick huff, he could still hear the sounds of fighting. "We need to leave," he said. Grabbing Margaret by the hand, they returned to the upper barracks, where Michael placed his head outside the window. Looking down, he knew the skies were swarming with hellish creatures. However, he knew that they would have to jump to survive. Grabbing a large bed sheet and some cloth, he tied Margaret to his back and told her to hold on. Making his way out to the window again, he looked down and suddenly felt fear come over him again. As an angel, he never had to worry about heights. As a mortal, he was petrified. Though despite his fears, he had to overcome them. Placing one leg over the railing, Michael closed his eyes and made one last prayer. "Holy Father, please give me the strength to save this child. Allow me to save one innocent life." He took a deep breath, got his other leg over the railing, looked down again, and jumped. After that, darkness and silence. From that day onward, the people's hope dwindled as darkness consumed the world. The outposts were destroyed, and all the watchers were slain. Humankind was now defenseless. The world's nations were soon divided into territorial regions occupied by a different warlord, loyal to Lucifer. Humanity was now at the mercy of these fierce warlords, as much lost hope and succumbed to darkness. Yet there were few remaining who still believed. Few were still looking for angels. And with that, viewers and listeners, we will stop here and pick it up next time. Again, so sorry for the delay, but as always, this is the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill, signing out, wishing you all a wonderful evening.